Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our city who are involved in activities designed to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. My guest today is Kate Rollison, the executive director of the ARC of Central Chesapeake. Kate, welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Let's start by talking about the mission of the ARC. What's it all about?
Well, the mission of the ARC is to assist people in becoming as independent as possible, and that means that we help them to live in typical communities, to get jobs that are designed specifically for them, and to engage the community overall in helping to change society so that it is better for the community as well as being better for the person with a disability.
One of the things that appears a lot in the literature about the ARC is the concept of developmental disabilities. Mm-hmm. Could you explain to our viewers what that term means?
Basically, a developmental disability is anything that happens prior to the age of 22 and is a substantial disability. So that includes things like intellectual disabilities, used to be called mental retardation. We're changing the language to better reflect what it is and also to be more sensitive to people who have that type of disability. It's cerebral palsy, it's severe epilepsy, it's head trauma, it's autism. And again, anything that happens prior to the age of 22.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific types of services that you have that are aimed at individuals who have specific kinds of conditions? Or is it sort of, across the board?
It's really across the board. And then we make extra effort to make sure that we're really targeting it to the person and not to a group as a whole. Mm-hmm. But what is it that you need?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of the ARC? When did it get started? How did it get started? How has it evolved to what it is today?
The ARC started actually at the national level in the early 50s, and it was started by parents who wanted to make sure their kids could go to school, because at that time, kids could not go to school. They'd go to school for 6 weeks. Teachers would say, you're never going to learn how to read and write. Go home. Mm-hmm. I had a friend like that when I was a little girl. The ARC in Anne Arundel County started in 1961. Again, it was started by families who wanted to get their kids into school, wanted to make sure that there would be day programs and other kinds of services for kids when they left school. And it took until 1974 in Maryland, and we were one of the first states for kids with developmental disabilities to actually be able to stay in school and have services designed for them. Mm-hmm. But from its inception, the ARC has always been grassroots and engineered by families. One of the major ways that the ARC has changed in recent years, over the past 10, 15 years, is that people with developmental disabilities themselves are beginning to drive what it is we do, so that it's a combination of families and people with developmental disabilities working in concert. Mm-hmm. And folks with developmental disabilities are very active in advocacy at the county and state legislative efforts. And we have a group here in Anne Arundel that calls themselves People Connect. And again, it's people with disabilities themselves, and in addition to going to the state legislature, they also do community service projects. The group sponsored a day of service on Martin Luther King Day and encouraged community groups to bring in canned goods, that went to Food Link to bring in clothes for winter, that went to groups like the Lighthouse. And we're very proud of their efforts and really did a wonderful thing for the community.
The ARC has a wide range of programs and services, including community living, the Chesapeake Neighbors program, customized employment, and family support services. What I'd like to do is to talk a little bit now about each of these in turn, and perhaps give you an opportunity to give us some examples of real individuals who've benefited from these programs. Let's start with community living. Tell us a little bit about this program and what it's designed to do, and some individuals who've benefited from it.
Well, community living is designed to help people live in typical neighborhoods. In typical family homes, we don't do any kinds of congregate services, so a typical house that we help to staff is going to have 3 people who live in it, along with a staff person we call a house manager who creates the family environment. You know, so we're not talking shift staffing and people running in and out. And I think that's very, very important. So in Annapolis itself and all over the county, there are lots of houses where we provide services, and it can be anywhere from 10 hours a week of drop-in support. There's a guy that lives down here on Hilltop that he gets 10 hours a week of drop-in support, somebody who comes in, helps him pay his bills, make sure that he's got adequate groceries. And for other people who have very significant developmental disabilities, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, there are staff people in that house. So, and services that are provided there are to help the person become as independent as possible. And that varies from person to person on how much support that person's going to need and how independent they're truly going to become. And those services are designed through an individual plan that's laid out by the family, by the individual, and by the day program, which might be a place like Providence Center. So, and we've put in lots of ramps for people who use wheelchairs to get around, and neighbors don't always like them, but people need to live where they need to live.
Can you think of any examples of individuals you can think of who have benefited from the program? Any personal stories?
Well, I'm going to talk about this one particular guy that lives on Hilltop.
All right.
Okay, and his name's Joe, and Joe used to live at the Rosewood Center, which was an institution for people with developmental disabilities. And Joe would tell you that he was really mistreated there, and he used to have to clean the place and they paid him in cigarettes. They never paid him money. And then he went into a much larger group home and learned some skills. And now is in his own apartment. He works 2 jobs. And he loves his apartment. He loves living by himself. He keeps that apartment much neater than I would ever keep any place that I live. And yeah, he works down at the Eastport Yacht Club. And he also works cleaning like the Legislative Services building. So he's got money coming in.
That's very good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, how about, let's look at one of your other programs. Let's look at the one that's called Chesapeake Neighbors. That's an interesting title. What's that about?
Chesapeake Neighbors is actually a subsidiary of the ARC, which holds housing stock. And the reason that we've put housing separate from support services is that if Maryland services are set up in a very good way, in that if you don't think we're doing a good job for you, you can in essence fire us and go to another agency to get support services. And by having Chesapeake Neighbors, people don't have to leave their home in order to continue getting the services. So we're very proud of that. It's taken a number of years to get it in place, but it's off and running.
Any examples of individuals who have benefited from it?
Well, recently, the Rosewood Center in Owings Mills finally closed, and we're really proud of the advocacy that we put in. It was a really horrible place. I've been there way too many times. And through Chesapeake Neighbors, we were able to purchase 3 homes where we now provide the support services for people to live there.
We're going to take a break now, but when we return, we will be talking some more with Kate Rollison about the specific programs and services that are offered by the ARC of Central Chesapeake. We're talking today with Kate Rollison, the Executive Director of the ARC of Central Chesapeake. And our show is coming to you today from their offices on Spa Road in the city of Annapolis. Kate, one of the other programs that the ARC of Central Chesapeake works on has to do with customized employment. Tell us how that works.
Well, customized employment is basically that we don't do any congregate services, where it's a lot of people together. There are enough services like that in the county. We don't need to replicate them. But what customized employment is that you come to us along with your family, and we learn about what it is you're interested in. What is your passion in life? What do you like doing? Are you the kind of person who likes to work with a big group of people, or a small group of people? And are you the kind of person that likes to work mornings? Are you the kind of person that likes to work evenings? Because we all have those different kinds of interests. And actually, right now, right outside my door, there's an example of somebody doing customized employment. And it's called Greg's Services, and one of the things he does is he cleans. He likes to clean. He's really good at cleaning windows, and he also owns a couple of vending machines. So,
how about your programs on family support and individual support? The programs in those areas.
Those programs are designed around the person and around the family, and generally involve either some drop-in support services. For family support services, it might very well include helping the family to get some respite care so that the family gets a break and helps to keep the child at home with the family. Respite care is, if you look at any research, it's the #1 service that will help keep kids at home with their families. It might also mean, family support services might also mean a very small subsidy for a family who, along with all of the typical expenses of raising a child, also has expensive medications, orthopedic shoes to buy, wheelchairs to get repaired, and it's very small subsidies. It might be $100 towards the cost of medications. And over the past 2 years, because of the recession and because of people losing jobs, the demand for family support services is much higher, because the mom lost her health insurance when she lost her job. And she can't afford the daughter's medication. So,
you have some examples of people who've actually been helped by it, some real specific examples of individuals you could tell us about, stories.
Well, we've helped families so that they don't get evicted.
Well, it's important.
And we've helped a number of families so that the gas and electric doesn't get turned off in the winter.
Equally important.
And There's one family that I can think of specifically that the mom was really struggling. She'd lost her job. She had lost health insurance. And she was really struggling between buying her daughter's medications, and the daughter was having 10 grand mal a week, grand mal seizures, so she needed her medications. The mom also had 2 other kids. So she was struggling to put food on the table and having quite a difficult time, and we were able to help in purchasing medications.
The services that you provide, the programs you provide, obviously help a broad range of individuals. Could you give us a sense of what the demographic profile is for the people whom you serve in terms of ages, in terms of backgrounds and the like? Give us a sense of that, of the characteristics of the people you serve broadly.
Well, the demographics are very, very broad.
Okay.
We provide supports to very young children and their families. We also are providing community living services to people who are in their 70s. You know, intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities don't discriminate. Racially, ethnicity, and we have a specific position that does outreach to the Hispanic community to get families to get their kids to doctors regularly. And from an ethnic standpoint, it's very varied. It's I don't know specific percentages for you, but it's everybody.
Okay. Well, you know, you serve a lot of people. You've got a really good range of programs and services. How do you derive the funding for these excellent programs and services? Everywhere
we can.
Give us some examples of how you raise your money. How you get your money.
We do a lot of fundraising. We have a golf tournament. We have a bowl-a-thon. We had a party called Saints and Sinners. We do annual appeals asking for contributions. We get money from foundations and corporations. The vast majority of our funding, though, comes from state government, Department of Human Resources, and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
Well, that prompts a quick follow-up question, and that is, how has the economic downturn, which has definitely impacted the budgets of municipalities and other local governments like the county as well as the state, how has that impacted the work of the ARC?
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because I didn't mean to, but I inadvertently left out that we also do get money from county government and from the city of Annapolis.
Right.
But the economic downturn is very substantial in its effect on people with developmental disabilities. And that comes in 2 ways. One is that the demand is much higher for help, but the resources are just not there. I mentioned earlier how important respite care is to families. That particular program was cut by 40%. And that's, I mean, a month ago we cut off respite services to families for the entire rest of the fiscal year through June 30th. Family support services by the state were cut off by 11.5%. I'm not sure quite how they came up with 11.5. And we're very aggressively fundraising to try to make up that difference. Other services, no one cut sounds like a lot, but when you add them all up, you know, it's like, okay, we'll cut 2% now. And then 2 months later, it's another 2% cut. And another 2 months later, it's another 2%. So it just starts growing on top of the cuts. But no, the cuts are absolutely hurting people. They're hurting real people. You know, it's not just the agency. It's real people that we have to say no to because there is no money, and we know that that person really needs help.
You are serving on the transition team for our new mayor, Josh Cohen. What are your hopes for his administration?
Well, I'm hoping and I believe that there will be a very strong emphasis on disability issues. Annapolis needs a lot of help in terms of implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act, both from accessibility of physical issues like you don't put stop signs in the middle of a street or a sidewalk where you may very well have a curb cut, but then the person using a wheelchair can't go anywhere because the stop sign's there. And that Josh's administration will help to, what's the phrase I want, be a bully pulpit for encouraging more businesses to hire people with disabilities. So now I have good hopes for his administration.
Well, one of the first things he did was to name a staff member to actually coordinate ADA work. Is that not the case?
Absolutely.
And what's your reaction to that?
That is an excellent decision. The woman named Gail Smith has served with me on the Anne Arundel County Commission on Disability Issues, which is where ADA issues are addressed. You can make a call and say, hey, I couldn't get into the hospital because there were a bunch of cars parked in handicapped spots, and I needed one. And those cars didn't need handicap accessibility. And there hasn't been anyone for the city of Annapolis who takes that on. And we have more than 50 employees in the city, so we have to have, by law, an ADA coordinator. And that was a great move by Josh, and I'm very excited by it.
Looking back over the time that you have served with the ARC, and perhaps even further back than that, what would you identify as being the accomplishment that you are most proud of in terms of what the organization has done?
Well, one of them is helping to close institutions and helping to end the segregation of people with more severe disabilities, and sometimes not even that severe of a disability. But years ago, that's what was done. You know, a doctor would say to family, put them away, forget about them. And like I said, recently we closed the Rosewood Center, which was the oldest institution in the state of Maryland. So that's absolutely one of the things I'm proudest of. One of the other things that I'm most proud of is, and this is going way back in my career, is helping to design and get family support services up and running in the state.
What do you see as being the greatest challenges facing the ARC going forward?
Well, for right now, it's budgetary, certainly, and keeping services alive and vibrant. So that's a major issue for right now. But long term, it's also working with the community so that community members become energized and want to end the segregation of people with developmental disabilities. And it is segregation. And helping neighbors to understand that because a ramp goes in, it doesn't mean your property values are going to go down. Used to get lots of phone calls like that. Within the past 5 to 10 years, that has really dropped off, but it still continues. So getting more people involved in the cause. And, you know, we have our slogan, our tagline is changing minds, changing lives. And that applies to the people we support, that applies to families, but it also applies to the community at large. So that businesses see that people with developmental disabilities are in fact very good employees and have skills that may be different than mine or yours, but they have a lot of important skills to contribute.
You know, years before I retired, I worked at the State Higher Education Commission, and we had developmentally disabled adults work in the evenings, and they were connected with the Providence Center. And they were wonderful people. So I used to work a lot at night and had a chance to interact with them. And do you think that having that chance to interact more with people with developmental disabilities will overcome that kind of NIMBY phenomenon which you described, where people just feel that I don't want these people next door to me, I don't want them in my neighborhood, I want them out of sight, out of mind? You have the concept then of segregating them.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen a lot of that over a lot of years where it lessens. It lessens and lessens. But it's that one-on-one where you meet somebody, you form a relationship, you see what the person has to contribute. And that does help to get rid of that NIMBYism.
Yeah. Putting on your visionary cap, where would you like to see the ARC in 5 years?
I would like to see the ARC be able to touch a lot more families and a lot more younger families. I would like to see us able to help more families before the family goes into crisis, because in a lot of ways that's sort of how the system works now. I'd like to see more people who are choosing where they live, you know, and saying, yeah, I can afford this place, I want to live here, and I'm picking my roommate. Making more of the decisions that you and I make every day.
If some of our viewers would be interested in getting in contact with the ARC and learning more about you, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, we have a website, and that's...
Give us the URL. If you know
the URL is www.thearccr.org, which stands for the ARC Central Chesapeake.
Or they can Google you.
They can Google us. They can just put in the ARC. They can go to our state ARC's website, which is the ARC Maryland, and find a local chapter. So if somebody's visiting Annapolis and they're from Harford County, they can go in and hit that button. And they can always call us.
And your phone number?
410-269-1883.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure, 410-269-1883.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like to have more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, you can call us at the number on the screen, 410-263-7998, or you can contact us by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. Or you can check out our page on the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on City Government, then Boards and Commissions, and scroll down to our page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."